Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video editing tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be checking out how to do this. It has been a while since I've done one of these tutorials, and today we're going to be doing a video tutorial rather than a photography tutorial, just because you guys have been asking me to do a lot more video tutorials and editing tutorials on that. So in today's video, we're going to be checking out how to edit that cinematic sequence that you just saw. This is kind of how I do it. It's my take on editing cinematic sequences, and there's so many different ways you can do it. But today I'm just going to be giving you my tips and tricks on how to edit cinematic sequences like that. In saying that, I don't want to make this video too long, so let's just jump straight into it.
Okay, so jumping onto Premiere Pro, my setup might look a bit different from the default in some of your guys, but that's okay. This is just how I like to set up my Premiere Pro. Anyway, just jumping into it, I've imported a few clips onto my timeline from one of my recent vlogs where Matthew and I went over to the garden route. I'm just going to go get started and bring a music piece into this, and I'm going to use Tim Cullen's City of Dreams. Technically, he's not a musician, I don't think. He is a filmmaker slash cinematographer, but he makes really epic music as well. So we're going to bring this in, and I'm actually not going to use the whole song. I'm going to cut it just before the second drop of the song, so like right over there, just because I don't think I have enough footage for it really, but it's okay. So we're going to bring that into our timeline, just drop that at the beginning of all the footage. This is just, again, how I like to edit my footage. I like bringing all the clips onto the timeline and then working from there. Also, as you can see, I'm editing it on the how I edit my cinematic sequences timeline. So it's going straight into this video that you're watching right now. So the first thing I like to do is play through the song and make cuts exactly where the beat changes, and I know that's where I need to change my clips. So what I've done is customize my keyboard and make the E button to directly cut footage at where the time code thing is at the moment. So if you guys want to do the same, just go over to Premiere Pro at the top here, go to your keyboard shortcuts, and then if you type in edit, it should come up where it says add edit. As you can see, I've added my E key, and this is just because it makes it really super quick and easy for me to edit footage. I might make another video on this as well, but basically you can see where the line is at the moment, and if I just press E, it'll make it cut directly there. And I made it E specifically because Q and W are used for ripple edits. So if you press Q, it'll cut and move your footage directly to the previous endpoint. So if I press Q, it's going to cut it there and move it back, whereas if I had to do it the classic way of doing it, you would have to press C on your keyboard or go to the cut tool, click on where you want to cut your footage, click on V, which is the pointer, go ahead and click on that, and then delete, and then click in the middle, and then right click and say ripple delete. So it's just a whole long process. So for me, it's just a lot quicker just to press Q, and that whole thing is done in one go. Alternatively, W does the same thing, except it's a forward ripple edit, so it cuts to the end point and onto the next clip. So anyway, that's just a quick tip of the day. So as I was saying, I like to start off by just playing the music and making cuts exactly where the beat drops. So I'm going to start off by doing that. So you have to kind of count the beats as well in order to do this properly. It's not that difficult though, once you get the hang of it. You really just have to anticipate the beat coming, and that's all really. It's a sick song from Tim Cullen though. check out his YouTube channel, the links will be in the description. And there we go, that is pretty much how I get started, just by cutting up the song. So now you can see I have the different points where I know I need to change the clips. It's not necessarily I know I have to change it there, it's just a good suggestion and a good starting point. So moving on, I'm going to delete all the audio from these clips. I know audio does play a massive role in the creation of videos, but just for this one I am not going to focus on audio for now, and I'm going to delete that and just focus purely on the visuals. So now that we have that, just the visual clips, we can move on to placing them into this section that we have going here with the music and the different little compartments that we can slot them into. So the mood of the song also plays quite a big part in how you edit your videos. As we can hear by the start, it's quite cinematic, it's got a good build up to it, and I think this will be good for more landscape, moody kind of shots, and then on the drop it goes into more action, and this is probably where I would include shots of Matthew. It's more personal and a little bit faster paced. So in saying that, I'm going to look for some moody landscape shots for the beginning and just slot those in there. Just one thing that I forgot to mention as well is that almost all of these clips are filmed at a high frame rate. That means that I can slow them down to slow motion, and that just makes things a lot more cinematic, and it fits in with my style as well. Obviously you don't specifically need slow motion to make cinematic films. Most movies don't really use slow motion. Casey Neistat, for example, doesn't really use slow motion, but it just suits my style and suits the kind of videos that I want to make. So by shooting in high frame rate, I can slow the clips down. This was shot at 120 frames per second, therefore I can slow it down to 20%, which is pretty slow and makes for some really cool, smooth super cinematic footage. It's one thing that I also really like to do is save the key moments, the best shots for the drop, just because that's what people are expecting. They don't really want to see the best shots that you have in the build-up, and then when it comes to the drop, the key moment of the song, you don't really have your best shots and you don't have your best work to show. So try not to use all your best shots in the intro. That's just a top tip of the day. So this is what we have for the intro at the moment. As you can see, most of the shots are in slow-mo. This just makes it a lot more stable and a lot more cinematic in my opinion. We can add some more effects to this later on. And then also what I've decided to do is just cut the visuals as the audio drops right there, so that the audience is left wondering what's going to come next, and they are anticipating that drop, and you can hit them with your best shot right on that drop. So we're going to get into that right now. I'm going to find my next clips for that shot on the drop and introduce Matthew into the whole cinematic sequence. Okay, so we are making some progress. I've kind of split up the different areas of where we were with the song as well. So the first section of the drop, the first 4 bars, is at this lakeside little pier thingy by the canoes, and then we go over to the small mountainous area with the second 4 bars. And I just wanted to point out one thing that happened kind of by accident, but it's really cool to embrace these mistakes that you have in your films. Is this little like zoom out thing there on the drop is really cool, just because it adds to that kick drum on the beat, and it has that little zoom thing that you can't really do in editing. I mean, you can, but just the natural zoom of the lens looks really cool. So I'm just going to play that back one more time. So as you can see, it just adds to the nature of the sound and of the cinematic sequence that you're creating. What I am going to do with this clip though is, I like how fast it is in the beginning, but I'm going to slow it down as the song gradually loses power as well. We can see in the waveform as well. And also I just don't like how fast it progresses along on the actual like camera movements of this thing. So all I'm going to do is go to show clip keyframes, go to time remapping, click on speed, and then I'm going to click on the speed keyframe over there and just drag that out a little bit. And then from the start we're going to have 100, and then we're going to drop it down to around 40%, just because I think this was 60 frames a second if I'm not mistaken. We will see now how this looks. So just pull that out to fill the gap, and we play that. So I'd like it to slow down a little bit quicker. You can just drag that over to the side. So in my opinion, it's still a little bit shaky, as you can see. So all I'm going to do is right click on nest, and just say, as you can see, I have 850 nest sequences already, which is pretty crazy, but it's okay. Go over to your effects tab and then drag on your warp stabilizer. You can just search this if you don't have it saved in your custom thingies, if you don't have it saved in your custom presets, and just drag that onto the clip, and then this will stabilize it for you. So once you've done that, just go back and play the clip again. You can see it's a lot smoother and that looks much nicer, and then it cuts onto the next clip. So that's all good. I'm going to carry on editing this stuff. Obviously we can add a lot of different effects to this whole cinematic sequence. I don't want to make this video too long, but you can get really creative with it and do pretty much whatever you want to, whatever you can envision. There's probably a tutorial for it on YouTube, so just go nuts and create something epic. So just to end off the song over here, I'm going to add on a constant power effect, and that literally just fades out the audio to silence. And I just wanted to comment as well on what clips to choose for your cinematic sequences. I mean, a lot of it really comes down to personal preference, and I can't really tell you from a tutorial point of view on what clips to choose. It really just does depend on the music and the caliber of clips that you do have available. Another thing that I'm going to do is just add on a cross dissolve, and that'll just fade the clip to black as well as the music fades. I do think it's good to add some kind of story into your cinematic sequence as well. So obviously with this one we kind of introduce the landscape, give an idea of what we're going to be seeing in the cinematic sequence, and then when it drops we show the story of Matthew kind of traveling through these different places. Going on to a bit more of the technical things, just some finer details. What I'm going to do is I really like how this shot transitions into the next one, and I'm going to speed ramp this into the next one. I'm going to make a whole nother tutorial on speed ramping, so please don't ask too many questions down in the comments below on this. There are other videos on YouTube, so I'm going to do this pretty quickly. It's the same as the other one that I did earlier. So all you have to do is say time remapping, click on speed, go to the middle of the clip somewhere, drop a keyframe on there, open that up, and then all I'm going to do is ramp that up probably to around 250%, drag that out a bit further and fill in the gaps, and maybe do that a bit more. And then we can see at the end how that speeds up into the next one ever so slightly. I might actually make it a bit more just so it speeds up a bit quicker. And then going on to this clip, I'm gonna bring up the speed in the beginning and then slow it down just so it's a smoother transition from the clip before. Alright, so now that we have our cinematic sequence sorted, all we have to do next is color grade this. So what you're going to want to do is go over to your project file over here, click on this little new item thingy, click on adjustment layer and choose the sequence settings that you have, and just drag that onto your clip and stretch that out across the whole thing. So what we're going to do next is hit Shift, Alt and number 4, and that'll take you to the color section of Premiere Pro. From this point you can add any of your own LUTs that you have downloaded in the creative section over here and click on look. But for this tutorial I'm just going to add one of the default LUTs that Premiere Pro gives us, just so that all of you have the same options available. So I'm going to start just by looking through them, seeing which ones work best, and you can just click on this right arrow over here and I'll give you a little preview. That one looks pretty nice, the Fuji 125. I think I'm going to go with this one, the F125 for now. Which one is it? 93. Okay, so that look is applied to the whole thing. I'm just going to bring down the intensity just a bit because it might be a bit much for now. But yeah, if we play through the clip we can see that it is applied to all of these, and from this point we really just need to change the basic corrections if any of them look a bit out of the ordinary. So for example, I think the highlights in this one, maybe even the exposure is just a bit too much, so I'm going to click on the bottom clip over there and just drag down that exposure and drag down the highlights as well. Exposure can actually go a bit up. Yeah, that looks good. I'm also playing it in kind of low quality just because my computer can deal with it a bit better, as well as recording the screen. But that looks quite contrasty, so I'm just going to bring the contrast a bit down on that one. It also looks a bit shaky from the start, so what I'm going to do is go over to the editing section once again, and I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit. There's a bit of vignetting on the side as well. Keep Matthew in the center, and then I am going to nest this clip and warp stabilize it just like we did with the previous one as well. So do that and then bring on the warp stabilizer. There we go, that's looking a bit better, a bit smoother. And the colors on all these are looking pretty good. I don't even think we need to change it that much. That one's looking a bit dark, so if we go back to the color window, we can just bring up the exposure on that one. Maybe bring up the highlights a little bit. This one also, I think the exposure could be up just a little bit, and then bring the contrast up and the blacks down just to keep that contrast. It's looking all good. That one I think we can bring the shadows up just a little bit. It's looking a bit too dark for me. As well as this one. And the same for the last one, and that is pretty much all we need to do on the color grading. You can get a lot more in depth, but the basics of this tutorial is just to show you how to create the cinematic sequence. So that is that. I'm going to drop this into the main video now, and you guys will see this at the beginning of this video, and we can move on to wrapping this up. So in saying that,
so I hope you guys enjoyed that video editing tutorial. Obviously a lot of how I edit my footage is how I shoot my footage as well, and that is for a completely different video. If you guys do want to go check out how to make your footage look more cinematic, I have made a video on that as well, where I do go a bit more in depth of how to shoot your footage to make it look cinematic. So go check that out. The link will be in the description, or I'll pop it up here. So go check that video out after this one, and I hope you guys liked the video. If you did like it, please hit a like. If you're new around here, hit the subscribe button. Please leave in the comments any other video tutorials that you'd like to see, and I'll definitely take that into consideration. In saying that, I'm going to end today's video here. In the meantime, stay weird, don't die, make it happen.